Welcome back to the Seeing Red podcast. We have a great episode in store for you today. We have one of our returning guests coming back with us. We have Genevieve Collins from Americans for Prosperity. She's a former congressional candidate in Dallas, where she still resides. Genevieve spent 12 years at iStation before she ran for Congress, which is an education technology company focused on improving student reading outcomes. And also, she's a former D1 rock star rowing athlete. She does more in Texas politics, I think, just about anybody. I won't say she's the hardest working person in politics, but if she's not, I want to see who is. And we also have today with Genevieve from AFP, Legislative Director Sam Sheetz. He's been at AFP for 5 election cycles. That's nearly 10 years. And he helps get everything done from the election level to the legislative level. So I just want to thank both of them for joining us today. Welcome to the show.
Garrett, thanks for having me back.
Absolutely. Genevieve, I hear you're a little jet lagged. Did you just get off a plane?
Do I look it? Because I feel it. I just got back from Washington, D.C. I actually spent the last 2 days in Washington. Not that there was anything really major going on with the CR going on in Washington, but we were doing 2 things at AFP. We were first off celebrating our 20th anniversary working in Washington, D.C. and across America, making sure our legislators know that we are still the taxpayer champion. And part of that was ensuring that we were having direct one-on-ones with our members, talking about the upcoming and very dangerous looming fiscal cliff that we are fastly approaching as a nation. And that really is around how do we forecast and begin to look at 2025 with the expiration of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act? How do we talk about the expiration of certain ACA subsidies? And how do we start really talking about the difference between negotiating on the debt ceiling raising versus government spending? So it was a long few days, but got to meet with many of our Texas members and really talk about the financial crisis that we're approaching.
You know, I lived in D.C. for way too long, probably almost 5 years, but I say it felt like 10. And the days just feel longer in D.C. I'm not sure if it's just different types in the time zone, whatever else. It doesn't move the same way it moves down here.
That's so true. Well, and what was interesting is as they're all negotiating on this very important CR to keep our government open, it's also was a really good reminder that while they're negotiating on keeping the government open, we have got to actually put some restraints on our spending and make sure that with the cost of inflation that's affected every American in Texas over the last 4 years, the cost of inflation has impacted people's bottom lines to the tune of $27,888 for every Texan. Yeah. That's $1,041 a month, and we cannot afford this moving into next year. And so making sure that we're connecting real Texans and their financial burdens with the outcomes of our legislators' votes was incredibly important.
I feel like just there's been no real care about deficit spending in Washington ever, but even the veneer of it seems to have even fallen off over the past few years, and I'm glad you're doing the work to really hold folks accountable and talk about the issues that matter when it comes to issues concerning the national debt and this and just everything that involved with federal legislation. Did I see that AFP endorsed in one of those races here in Texas?
Yes, we have. We have endorsed, AFP Action has endorsed Monica De La Cruz, freshman congresswoman from the Valley, CD15. Both AFP Action and our sister brand Libre Action have endorsed Monica and are fully throated behind her, both on the doors, on the phones, in people's mailboxes, and across their phones on digital, with making sure that we re-elect Monica for being a true policy champion and standing up for her community over these last few years.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I've been really impressed with the Congresswoman with how she's handled issues over the past term. How are y'all? Have y'all been involved in any other federal races? I think that was the first time I've seen something from AFP Action on that.
Nope, this is our primary target for this year.
I've seen a lot of stuff coming out, a lot of stuff on social media from y'all's accounts talking about the state races, and that's one of the reasons why I love to have y'all on, because that's what we focus on here. What are you looking at the Senate level and the House level? Like, what sort of how involved are you, and like, what are y'all trying to do?
Well, let me set the stage, and then I'll let Sam take over. Okay. And part of the reason why we engaged so much at the state level is because there's more of an opportunity to change the makeup of the legislature. At the federal lines are pretty well set, and incumbents are very heavily favored at the federal level. But we want to make sure we defend and protect people that stand up for their communities. At the state level, we see a lot more opportunity, like I said, to really accelerate the trajectory of where we think Texas needs to go, from looking at how we're talking about state spending, making sure that our state works compared to Washington, D.C., right? We have a surplus. They have an overwhelming deficit. We also want to see school choice policy get passed. We want to see more affordable and accessible healthcare, free market healthcare options passed. And we want to see the legislature take control and unleash Texas energy while also securing the border. So we think that there's just a much bigger opportunity at the state level for more freedom, more opportunity, and more prosperity. Sam has really been the key general behind what we've been doing. So Sam, I'll let you share how we've put this plan together.
Yeah, thanks, Genevieve. Thanks, Garrett, for having me on. Yes, we are definitely engaged at the state level here in the state of Texas. We're playing in a handful of strategic races, honestly, where we have a policy champion in the race who can be a deciding vote for these critical policies that we're trying to get across. School choice and education savings accounts, like Genevieve mentioned, more personal options in healthcare, more tax relief, and a host of other issues. Because at the end of the day, we can have the best policies, but we need the champions on the floor in the legislature to cast their vote for these policies when that time comes. So here we are, only a few weeks away from when early voting starts. And this is where the grassroots can really come in and make a difference. Absolutely. This is crunch time for anybody who's worked on a campaign before. You know that this is the fourth quarter of the Super Bowl right here. And AFP and Libre are in a very strong position to make a difference in these races.
What are the key issues that you're using at the door or in direct communication to really activate your voters or activate potential voters to come out to vote for these champions?
Yes, I would say overwhelmingly it's a top 3 or top 4, depending on the district. So border security is by far the number one issue across the board. Doesn't matter what race it is, whether it's in Dallas, whether it's in San Antonio or the Rio Grande Valley. Border security is the runaway number one issue. And then it's kind of a toss-up for second and third place between healthcare. Healthcare is difficult to understand. It's expensive. It's complicated. People don't understand it, and they want more personal options. They want to be shoppers when it comes to consuming that product of healthcare. And then I would say kind of tied, maybe a little bit beneath healthcare, is inflation, cost of living, taxes. That is, impacts everybody. So I'd say between those three issues, people still care about school choice. They do. People still care about other issues, but that's what we're hearing the most at the doors. And what's really cool is what AFP gets to do is, for example, for some of these incumbents, our policy champions, they have a strong record of voting the right way on these issues. So it makes our job pretty easy when we just have to tell the people at the doors the great work that these policy champions are doing.
Yeah.
As a door knocker, that was always easier when that's we could point to the 9 legislative achievements they voted for or authored or whatever. It's like, oh, I really want there to be more funding for whatever. It's like, oh, well, look here, the exactly what my push card says.
Yeah.
So that's always excellent. Genevieve, did you have something you wanted to add?
Well, I just add, Sam's 100% on the money. Everyone knows at the presidential level, it's the economy, stupid, right? You got to give James Carville some credit for creating the ultimate one-liner. And that is certainly everyone in Texas has been affected by higher gas prices and exponentially higher grocery prices. But also in Texas, we are taking the brunt of this illegal immigration crisis. Some may say invasion. And we really feel the challenges of what's been going on with our border. And so while at the federal level, it's the economy, and we see that that's the main driving factor. Here in Texas, we see that border security, regardless of RID or swing voter, border and the economy are huge issues. And it's great to be able to talk about, hey, in Texas, our state works. We have a surplus. We want to keep conservative values and conservative fiscal policy, which just means fiscal responsibility, working and moving and in office. And people are really, really clamming onto that message.
That's fantastic. Well, I have a kind of more in the weeds question for some of our more in the know of viewers. So I'm kind of curious, and maybe we'll teach some folks a little bit about how the elections work at kind of a real granular level. At this point in the cycle, we are, I don't even know the day count out, 30, 40-ish days away, from 40 probably days away by the time this comes out. And there are times where who you're targeting with your ads or your door knocking activity or even things like your emailing lists will change. And it's typically more or less two piles. There's the persuasion pile and there's the propensity pile. Persuasion pile are folks that are probably going to vote. You just don't know how. And propensity votes are for, once again, I'm not telling you Sam or Genevieve anything they don't know. Propensity votes end up being folks who are going to vote for you, but they might not vote. So you're trying to turn out one or the other. And I'm just kind of curious right now, is your messaging geared towards more persuasion, or is it geared more towards propensity, or is there kind of a secret sauce you're using to get the results you're hoping for?
Well, if we give you our secret sauce, then anyone can do this, Garrett. Come on.
Well, that's fair.
No, I will say, and Sam, please chime in here. What makes Americans for Prosperity unique in this marketplace, and what we really focus on, is we're going to persuade as many people as we can. We need every vote to come out, and we need to be able to count every vote. But our job at AFP and how we see it is that we want to expand the tent. We're going to talk to swing voters and low propensity voters. Every campaign should be talking to their high propensity voters. They should be talking to the people that they really need and want to get out. What we see our comparative advantage and really our ability at scale across Texas is to talk to those swing voters and really connect people with policy, but more importantly, hear people at their own homes, at their doorsteps about the issues that are really affecting them. And then we talk in normal ways, not super political ways. We talk as normal people to our neighbors and connect those folks with who we believe are policy champions.
Absolutely. I would just add, that's kind of another luxury that we have working on the issues that we do, is every single person in Texas needs healthcare at some point, or education, or they're impacted by cost of living. So the messaging doesn't really change, because I would say the messaging is pretty universal. It doesn't matter whether you're a swing voter, whether you're solidly in one camp or the other. It's, people need these policy wins and these policy victories to keep Texas, as free as it is. So can't give you the secret sauce, but it's a combination of both, I would say. And again, this is what we do at Americans for Prosperity, 365 days a year. We do this full time. So this is really kind of our where we get to go to work and we get to make a difference in these races.
Well, I'm glad y'all didn't take the bait, because if you did, I'd probably have to cut it out or something would happen. No, I appreciate y'all answering that as candidly as you could.
Sure.
I think it's good that for people to kind of just know a little bit more about how
Yeah.
this happens, but it's also good to attack issues as strongly as you do and to not really change it for much for who you're talking to. Now that said, you're talking a lot about school choice. What is your feeling about how that's going to go in the next legislative cycle? So, once the election's over, what are we thinking is going to what's going to get passed?
Well, Garrett, I'm very bullish.
Okay.
Sam and I and our teams across the state spent the majority of the primary being very busy helping identify and elect and work to elect policy champions that are ardent school choice proponents. And so we participated and played in 22 races in the primary cycle. Now we won. We helped win 19 of those races. And then now we're in, I think, 12 races. School choice isn't the top issue in a lot of these general election races. However, it is a secondary or tertiary issue. And I think that we're going to pass school choice as a watershed moment in Texas next year. I think the ground has been laid, and getting a lot of rural Republicans removed who needed to be removed for a whole host of issues, not just school choice votes, has really put everyone on notice, and that they know that this is coming.
You talked about the races you're involved in. Was there any how much of it is holding majorities you feel like you have right now? And to explain to the audience, a hold is typically keeping a seat with an incumbent party. Now, AFP is not a party, so I guess for this case, are we talking about hold or people you've already flipped in the primary, where for different seats, versus growth, where you're running a candidate now in the general election versus that's a liberty loving type candidate that's running against somebody that's not?
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah. So it's a little bit of both. Again, we had, like Genevieve mentioned, a lot of success in the primaries and the runoffs. We went 19-3 overall, not a bad batting average. So one of those races that we need to hold is House District 121 in San Antonio. Mark LaHood is our policy champion who we helped get across the line in the primary, and he has a race on his hands. They're not going to give it to him. So we are prioritizing that race, as well as our partners at the Libre Initiative, 2 policy champions, one in San Antonio, one in the Valley, Representative John Lujan, as well as Representative Janie Lopez. Those are the tightest races in the state of Texas. And again, both of those lawmakers have taken the tough votes. They stuck their neck out. Put it to you this way, a lot of people on the school choice votes, whether it was the budget amendments, whether it was some of the procedural kind of tactics in the middle of session, didn't stick their neck outs. They hit the white light, as we all say at the building. They didn't vote yes or no. They hit present not voting. They did not want to stand up and be counted with the parents and the children. And you want to know what? John Lujan and Janie Lopez did the hard thing, and they stood with the parents and the students, even in the hardest possible situation that they were in. So because of that, our communities in San Antonio and the Rio Grande Valley are going to back them up on November 5th. And we are heavily prioritizing those races. So to answer your question, it's 3, I guess, hold or defends that we're really prioritizing, but also we see an opportunity in North Texas, House District number 70. Steve Kennard, we have endorsed in that race, AFP has, and that's going to be another close race. That's in the Plano, Frisco, Collin County area, the 75 corridor, we see a big opportunity there to flip a seat, at least on the school choice vote, from a solid no vote at the incumbent to a solid yes vote with Steve Kennard. So it's a combination of both.
Fantastic. Well, when we are looking at kind of this dichotomy between the election cycle and then the legislative cycle, we talked about it in the last episode with AFP with Genevieve. AFP is really unique in Texas in particular, with how involved it is in both elections and in getting things across the finish line in Austin. It's a start to finish process on a given issue with AFP. Like you mentioned, school choice is more of a legislative issue. It's more something that we talk about here. Like if you're really involved in politics or the legislature, it's less of an election issue. What are some election issues that you're talking about at the door that you think are going to really resonate at the legislative how do you expect, or what do you, so let me put it a little bit more differently. How do you expect immigration and the healthcare stuff you're talking about when it's resonating with people at the door to translate into legislation, and what are y'all pushing at the legislative level?
Sure. I'll start off on the immigration side, and Sam, I'll let you take healthcare. Every state has now become a border state. Thanks to Governor Abbott and his leadership, he has made and shined a light that every state is now a border state, with sending these migrants all over the country, especially the sanctuary cities. Texans really feel the burden of what illegal immigration and open border Biden policies have done. And they want their communities to be safe. Border security has really become a very localized issue, whether you're in Plano or down in Harlingen or Hidalgo County. This is really a local issue. They want safe communities. They want people to come here legally. They don't want our systems, our hospitals, our schools to be overwhelmed and not be able to be resourced. And so people don't want fentanyl in their backyards. And so they want to see their legislators, even at the state level, have the courage to support DPS, sending DPS agents, have the courage to support building more border infrastructure, whether that's walls or buoys or technology or everything in between. So people are really aware, and it's not just a Republican issue. Because we talk to swing voters and independent voters, not just Republican or Democrat voters, they are really seeing what federal policy and bad federal policy is doing to affect their communities, and it is moving people more for our candidates that actually do talk about the need for genuine border security here in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And Sam, you wanted to talk a little bit about, I think, healthcare.
Yeah, I'll take healthcare and economic opportunity. So another race that we're engaged in is House District 52, Round Rock, Georgetown, Williamson County area, where our policy champion, Caroline Harris Davila, was the co-author. Her and Senator Hughes were the co-author of what we call the Texas Price Transparency Law. How if you get a medical procedure done, it is the law in Texas that they have to give you an itemized bill after that procedure or service is done, and it has to be spelled out in just plain to read language, so you can see how much stuff costs before you actually go pay for it. It's amazing how healthcare in this country, not just Texas, is a product that you don't know how much it costs until after you consume it. Imagine if buying a car was like that, like, oh yeah, just drive it off the lot and we'll send you a bill, 2-3 weeks. We're not going to tell you how much it is. That's insane. So Representative Harris Davila passed a bill for that last session. So when we go to talk to people at the doors about, rising healthcare costs, we kind of, dig around in those conversations about how complicated the billing process is, how you don't know how much it costs. And that's where we get to, like you mentioned earlier, Garrett, we get to mention, oh, well, Caroline Harris passed this law, she passed this law to help that go. go through, but also kind of, what can be done going forward in the next session in the 89th to make progress on that issue. So I would say that's for healthcare. And then the economic opportunity issue set, right? We're here in, early fall. So I'm told it's still 100 degrees in Austin, but fall is upon us. Pumpkin spice is out. But I would just say this is the period of the year where the local governments are setting their tax rates, where they have, done the appraisals. They've supposedly listened to your protests. They've set the budget, and now they're approving the tax rate. And guess what? Taxes are going up all across the state, and people are upset about that. People are upset about that because, after the last session, we had $18 billion worth of tax relief. But by the time it actually gets to the taxpayers, after the local governments have taken as much as they can possibly grab, their tax relief isn't as big as it could have been. So kind of explaining that kind of nerdy issue in easy to understand ways to voters. Voters want to do something about runaway spending at the local level.
Absolutely.
Why are we maxing out the tax rate every single year, exceeding the no new revenue rate, passing hundreds of millions of dollars worth of bonds? Like, of course, like extra spending like that is going to lead to higher taxes, which means less money in their pockets, which means difficult financial decisions for them and their families. So again, those are two of the issues that we're really talking about. And again, people are upset about those issues. They just don't know where to turn or who to yell at sometimes. And that's really where AFP can educate these voters on the issues.
Well, that's I appreciate y'all kind of talking a little bit more about specific things that are happening in Austin. What are some things outside of the umbrellas we've talked about that you kind of identify as low-hanging fruit for the legislature to attack quickly and with, a relatively little like special interest combat on, like to really make big differences for people in liberty in Texas?
Well, I'm really excited about an issue that we started working on last year that we are really accelerating this year, and that's housing. With 1,300 people moving to Texas every day, we have all these businesses coming here and Fortune 500 companies moving their headquarters here. Well, these people need a place where places to live at prices that they can afford. And so really shining a light on how little supply there is in the housing market and how it's really inflating housing prices, and what are some free market opportunities that can be done to support growing more housing. For example, I'm looking at the Dallas skyline right in front of me, and there are many empty floor plates in these skyscrapers. How can we look at changing some regulations or some zoning laws that would allow for commercial development reuse into mixed use or residential use? How can we put workers closer to where they work in high quality homes? I think housing is an area where, as we're talking to folks around the state, young people cannot afford to buy a house for about 10 years. And so they're living with their parents, they're living with apartments, and they're living with multiple people. And they want to enjoy the American dream and have their version of the house with the white picket fence. And so there's now Gen Z is really starting to come online with the millennial generation around housing policy. And it's pretty exciting to see. We're also looking at, giving homeowners more say over their own properties through allowing accessory dwelling units to be built and utilized without government permission. These are accessory dwelling units, ADUs. They're really like granny flats. If you want your mother-in-law to stay on your property, well, you don't need to ask the government for permission. You probably just need to ask your wife.
Probably.
Yeah.
Well, so you're talking about the thing, what the ADUs is just building a new dwelling on an existing parcel of land that's technically a separate residence that they can rent out.
Think about so I have a freestanding garage. It's one story, but what if I wanted to build, a little studio on top of it? I have to ask permission from regulators and from the city council and all sorts of people that don't need to have a say in what kind of studio apartment I build over my garage.
Well, absolutely.
I would just add to that, Garrett. I was going to say I moved to Texas 2007 from the Northern Virginia, Washington, D.C. area. And one of the biggest reasons that I moved down here was the lower cost of living compared to the Northeast, the Mid-Atlantic. It was just so much cheaper, plus no state income tax. So that's an instant raise right off the bat. And what we're running into now, because of our population boom, is that cost of living that's so attractive to so many people coming here, the businesses, the workers, literally people like me, that's starting to disappear. And that can really throw a wrench in our economic prosperity if the workers, who are relocating here can't afford a place to live. So this is like 2 or 3 issues. The ripple effects of this issue hit like 2 or 3 other issues. So it really is a supply and demand issue. We're a little bit of a victim of our own success here in Texas, that so many people want to move here for good reason, but supply just simply cannot keep up with the surging demand. And that's really what this issue boils down to, is just getting more supply and more stock online for people to choose from.
Absolutely. Well, as we close things up for this show, I want to thank y'all for coming on. But before I let you go, was there anything else that you really wanted to make sure we touched on or people knew about, or maybe they can find more information about y'all somewhere, that you can point people to going forward?
Well, Garrett, thank you for having us. We are so excited about what we've been doing. It has felt like a very long 2 years because, as you said, we don't just do electoral issues. We actually see the entire life cycle through the policy side of things. And so we are launching our new campaign called Freedom is Bigger in Texas. And you can visit our website, www.freedomisbigger.com, to learn more. But it's really, how are we spotlighting opportunities for Texas to expand our freedom, to expand prosperity for everyone? And there's real issues that we have in our state. We don't shy away from those issues. More, we want to lean into those issues. We want to inspire people to find their voice, to join us at the Capitol, to join us in their communities, and really be the change that they want to see across the state. And so we're going to be using this campaign for the next 2.5 years, really building a movement. We want more freedom in Texas, but we expect that freedom is bigger in Texas than anywhere else in the country.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Genevieve, for coming on, and Sam for joining us. It's been a fantastic show. To our listeners, thank you so much. Make sure you like and subscribe. That really helps us out. It helps everybody out. If you like, subscribe, and leave comments, shoot us messages. You can reach us at me via email at host@seeingredpodcast.com. Follow me on Twitter at GW Fulce. Genevieve and Sam, do y'all have Twitter handles you wanna blast out there to folks for people to find you and connect with you online?
Sure. Shoot me a message at GCollinsTX. GCollinsTX.
Yeah, same here. Mine is at Samson Sheetz. Samson, like the biblical character, at Samson Sheetz.
Fantastic. And Sheetz, for those who are listening, is SHEETZ. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us. We always appreciate it. We'll have to have you come back on, and when the session starts back up, to kind of talk about how you're moving this legislation you've been trying to get through the process, and let us know how it's going. But until then, thank you so much, and we'll see our viewers and everybody next week. Bye, guys.
Right.
You've been listening to the Seeing Red podcast. It's always Texas politics and beyond. We present the facts and opinions. The Seeing Red podcast with your host, Andy Turner and Garrett Fulce. Thank you, and tune in next week. And please do us a favor. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss a single episode.